BaconTreePreps.com. I'm Evan Wren, and this is the Capital Farm Credit Wednesday night podcast, our weekly look at the area athletic scene, what happened last week, and what's going on this week. I'm here with my partner, Dan Youngblood, via Zoom, and tonight, Dan, our guest is Abilene softball coach Jenna Bane, and the Lady Eagles, the War Eagles, are on fire. They've won 7 out of their last 8 ball games, or 6 out of their last 7, rather.
Yeah, they are. They're playing very well right now. They got off to a little bit of a rough start in district play. Started 1-4, and we're pretty disappointed by that. But they really got things turned around with a 2-1 9-inning win over Central at home, and that really got them going. They went 5-1 in the second half of district play, with their only loss coming 4-3 in 9 innings to a really good Midland High team. They went and beat Friendship 9-0. That was Friendship's only district loss of the season. So they're playing well. They played a strong schedule down the stretch, and it played really well against it. So I think you've got to be pretty excited for what they're doing, the momentum they're taking to the playoffs. And I think Coach Bain is a big reason for that. She's brings a lot of energy to the field, and I think you can kind of see that rubbing off in what the players are doing. And it's a fun time to follow that program. And I know that it'll be fun to talk to her about the way they're playing and kind of her thoughts on this first playoff matchup.
Before we jump into this week's show, we need to thank our primary sponsor, Capital Farm Credit, with offices all over Texas, including Stanford and Abilene. Buy your own slice of Texas with Capital Farm Credit. Together, we're better. All right, and with that, before we bring on Coach Bain, we're going to talk about the softball postseason, which gets underway this week, but also an incident happened last week that bears mentioning. Owen Woodward, former baseball pitcher from Breckenridge, now was pitching with Weatherford College against North Central Texas College last week. And most of us have seen the video on YouTube where he charged down a base runner. Apparently something was said out there that set him off. And Owen has been removed from the baseball team. And the reason I want to bring this up is that I don't sympathize with, I don't apologize for what he did. But I do sympathize for what a pitcher is going through when you've just given up a jack and you're in a vulnerable spot, you're feeling bad, and somebody says something. You're in a very vulnerable position right there. And I don't know that I agree with removing the young man from the team. I think that a suspension would have sufficed. Now, let me say this. I understand the coaching, coaching's trying to instill discipline in their ball club, and they're trying to set an example. This is not going to happen on my team, et cetera. I understand that. But I think given the situation, he was in a vulnerable spot and put into that spot by someone else. I think a suspension may have been better. That's just my opinion. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's a tough one. It's really difficult, and I'm kind of torn because on one, we seem to be having more and more of these types of incidences where there's violence over words. I think we've got to find a way to kind of get away from that as a society. We're seeing it in all aspects. You talk about the Oscars, you talk about the umpire assaults, which we had a podcast on a couple of weeks ago. So on one hand, I think we can't normalize these types of things. So I think you have to come down relatively hard. On the other hand, I do I understand where you're coming from as well, and that you and I both have worked with Owen. We have some experience with him. I don't think he's a bad kid. Everything I've heard from him, from people who know him well, will tell you that was out of character for him, clearly.
Yes.
So I do think this was an issue where it was just basically a momentary lapse in judgment. The issue was, I mean, it's a pretty big one. I mean, you're going to have, actions have consequences. So you're going to, obviously this was out of the ordinary enough that it became a pretty viral deal where people watched it and were like, wow. I mean, it's still pretty jarring. It is unfortunate. It's just an unfortunate situation, particularly when you know the kid involved. And like I said, that those who know him well will tell you it's completely out of character for him. So I do feel really, bad that happened and that he's having to go through what he's going through. And I hope that at some point he does get another opportunity. That's the one thing about, JUCO, you're only there for 2 years. So even if it had been a suspension, we're nearing, the midway point toward the end of the year. It might have taken him through his entire sophomore year anyway, and then it might have ended. It might have been basically a difference without a distinction in terms of suspension or being released from the team. But I do hope this works out for everyone involved. I think this is a good opportunity to learn from, and I think that if you're in Owen's situation, you really have no choice but to do that now. But I do hope that someone does give him another opportunity. I don't think this should be a career-ending issue. I don't think people learn from things like that. I think that that there is some good that can come from this, and it's just one of those really unfortunate situations.
All right, and with that, we're going to jump into softball postseason play, which opens this week, and we have a number of teams that we feel have a shot at making a decent run. Obviously, the Stanford Lady Bulldogs, if you're going to top that list, the defending Class 2A state champions with Citlali Gutierrez in the circle. The only teams that have beaten them this year are 4A, 5A, playoff teams. Playoff teams from a higher level, and they've even beaten some of those teams from that higher level that are going to be in the playoffs. This is if you're going to start somewhere, we have to start with Stanford.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and when you're talking about Stanford, that kind of segues into the locals as well, because you talked about they have 4 losses this season, and all 4 of them are to schools 5A or above, including Abilene High, to which they lost 1-0 in 9 innings. Wiley was a 1-run game in extra innings. They lost a playoff warm-up game last week to a really good Lubbock Monterey team, a 1-run game. That's a team that won Wiley's district. So obviously you're talking about a really good 5A team, a top 10 5A team. And then their only other loss, and really their only loss that was by more than 1 run, was to Class 4A number 2 Iowa Park. So this team, we talked about this before on another podcast as well, but so battle tested in the level of competition that she loaded up that non-district schedule with. If there's a 2A team that can beat this Stanford team, I want to see them, because this team, their body of work is really, really impressive. Even the losses are impressive by this team.
All right. Elsewhere in the area, we're going to drop down to Class 1A. And Dan, one ball club that we're going to be keeping an eye on are the Eula Lady Pirates. They had a good run last year, nearly made it to state, and they look like a threat again this year.
Yeah, I think Eula is definitely a team to watch. You mentioned what they did last year, and then this year they've played really well, put together a really nice district record, playing up against a couple of quality 2A opponents. So I think that this is definitely a dangerous team. They open their playoff run against Rotan, and it should be what I think a pretty lengthy run. They've got an opportunity to do some nice things, so it'll be fun to watch what that team can do.
All right, up in Class 2A, we've got we mentioned Stanford, they're the defending state champs. But there's a sprinkling of some pretty darn good teams from our area in there. Colorado City is in the mix at 17-5. A revamped Hamlin Lady Piper team that's 19-4 is going to be in the mix. That's another team that's going to be a threat and possibly making a deep run. Cisco is in there. Forsan is in there. We have a number of good ball clubs this year in Class 2A.
One kind of dark horse team I think you have to watch out for, because they've got a really good pitcher, is Coleman. I got to see them against Winters, and that's a team that, I mean, I think you're not going to put them on even footing in a matchup with Stanford, but that is a team that is dangerous. And here's one thing I think you're going to see, because we saw this last year. This region 1 2A, is pretty well dominated by big country area teams. I think there's a fairly decent chance we're going to see in all area region semifinals. And then obviously Stanford's obviously the favorite, but it'll be fun to see kind of which teams can try to challenge them as we get closer to a region championship. But you're going to see a lot of our teams do well in that region 1 bracket, I think.
That's absolutely correct. And I think, Dan, that it extends into region 2. We can't forget about the Heiko Lady Tigers, the revamped ball club under Ryan Starnes. They enter the playoffs at 17-6. They're a threat.
Yeah, that's a really interesting team. You mentioned Coach Starnes, who followed Coach Swearingen over from Brock, where he had a ton of success, took them to state a time or two. And it's interesting. He's had basically immediate success over at Heiko. They won their district and with another quality team, Rio Vista, out of there as well. So I'm eager to see just how well this Heiko team can do. They played a playoff warm-up game against Holly. It was a real close game. They lost by 1 run. But I am interested to see kind of what this team can do in the playoffs, because they've been a surprise in the regular season. And the thing that's interesting is that it's, like we said, Starnes comes over from Brock to Heiko and immediately kind of sets a standard there. And it'll be interesting to see just how much he can build on top of that, because obviously they've laid a pretty strong foundation this year.
Yeah, and actually they've got one of the key elements. If you want to make a deep run, you need somebody in the circle. And Heiko is blessed with one of the best pitchers in the area, and Kirsten Fincannon. She's got 16 wins. She's one of the area leaders in strikeouts and ERA, a quality pitcher, and she's only a sophomore.
Yeah, she transferred over from Dublin, and like you said, it's had immediate success. But that Heiko program is definitely one to watch. They've got some good young players, and are clearly building something there. So it's going to be interesting to see how deep they can go in the playoffs. But I do agree with you. I think at this point, they are a threat in that region.
All right. Now we're going to jump up to Class 3A, where I think, we were talking about Class 2A being fun to watch, but we have got a bunch of quality teams in the 3A level, which is really, it's no surprise. Typically, the big country has a bunch of good 3A softball teams. This year is no different. A couple of teams that I'm looking at personally, Kahoma enters the playoffs at 23-4-1. I like Early as well. Early's playing pretty well. They swept a very good Brock team. And of course, Brock itself at 20-6 heading into the playoffs is a threat. There's a number of other ones.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Kahoma, you mentioned Brock, you mentioned Early, but there's several. And here's one thing that's interesting, and this tells you how good our area is in softball this year, is that we've got teams in 4 districts in 3A out of Region 1. And we had a couple of teams that were really good that missed the playoffs. You talk about a Jim Ned team that hit the snot out of the ball. They missed the playoffs. Comanche was a really quality team out of District 8. They missed the playoffs, which tells you how good the teams that are in the playoffs are.
Yes.
So I think that this is a really deep field. I don't know if we have any necessarily, state threats in there, but we've got a lot of teams that are capable of making runs, and it's going to be fun to see what they can do.
Well, I need to interrupt you because there's one team in particular that I forgot to mention that bears mentioning, and they're one of the top teams in the region, in my opinion. And I should have mentioned them right off the bat. That's the Merkel Lady Badgers, who will enter postseason play at 24-2. This is one of the best Merkel teams we've seen in a number of years. And then Clyde is out there also at 20-5.
Yeah.
You talk about a team that can hit. Clyde hits the ball well every year. I don't know how they do it, but every year the Lady Bulldogs hit the ball well, hit it hard every single year.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I just said that I'm not sure we have any state threats, and I kind of want to walk that back at this point because you mentioned Merkel. They've got the pitching, I think, with Josie Whitehead, just a sophomore, to make a deep run. They have, if they get hot and hit for her, they've got a chance, I think, to maybe do something like that. And then Kahoma is the other team. You look at what Kahoma has done, and they're one that I may have discounted a little bit just a minute ago with what I said, but that's a team that has played up a lot. I mentioned Abilene High earlier in the show, having beaten Wolford Friendship, the only team in that district to beat them. This Kahoma team beat that team in extra innings as well. So this is a Kahoma team that's played a lot of 4As and 5As and done really well against them. Played several 6As. It's a really quality team too, that's deep in pitching and has some really good offensive weapons as well. So those, I think, are the 2 favorites in our area. I'd put Merkel and Kahoma at the top, but you are right. There are several others that are really quality teams when you talk about Brock, Early, Clyde. And Clyde's always dangerous because they just hit the heck out of the ball. They're a tough team to get out. As Merkel learned in their regular season finale, they lost to Clyde in a really high scoring game at the very end of the district season. So this will be fun because we've got so many teams involved. We basically have, most of those 4 districts, and Breckenridge is a team we've got to mention as well. Breckenridge and Bangs. That's gonna be a fun series. Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. You go through this and you forget teams, and then as you start to think about them, you realize just how deep we are with quality teams at the 3A level.
Absolutely, and as good as Kahoma is, there's no guarantee they're going to get past the Wall Lady Hawks, which that's another outstanding team that they're going to have to get past in the bi-district round. So I just think, we've got so much talent just in depth this year in Class 3A. It's one of the best groups we've seen in a while overall.
And the fun thing about that is from our standpoint and from a fan standpoint, is that a bunch of these teams play each other right off the bat, and you're going to get a lot of matchups between teams in our area, which I think is always fun because these are teams that have some experience against each other. Once you get out of district, you kind of get to be able to gauge a little better kind of the strengths of these districts. But I think there's a lot of quality there, and it's going to be fun to see how it plays out.
And you're going to be heading out to the oil patch to watch that series, that Wall-Kahoma series. That should be a good one.
Yeah, I'm expecting that to be a really exciting series, and I'm eager to get a look at this Kahoma team because I've been following their scores throughout the year, and they've done some really impressive things. That's been a team that's kind of, I think, flown under the radar a little bit, but they're 23-4-1 going into the district, and a lot of those wins are over larger schools. So this is a really quality team.
In Class 4A, let's take a step up and take a look at the Class 4A lineup that we've got. We've got Big Spring in the playoffs at 22-9. We've got Sweetwater at 19-10. We've got Snyder at 15-16, and we've got a rebuilding Stephenville team that's still qualified for the playoffs at 10-17. One thing that might be missing in Class 4A they can get the big country a deep run. Every single one of our 4A teams can hit the ball well and field their positions well. We do not have a truly dominating pitcher at the Class 4A level. That might be a problem. We shall see if that inhibits their ability to anybody to have a deep run.
Yeah, and I think to some degree that kind of depends on how deep a run we're talking about. I think we've got three teams when you talk about Big Spring, Sweetwater, Snyder, that are all, I think, threats, to make a run to the region quarterfinals or maybe even region semifinals, just because of the lineups those are putting. And those teams all coming out of the same district, to 3-4A, were pretty close in district. Big Spring won that district, but Snyder actually beat Sweetwater a couple of times. They finished tied in the standings with Snyder taking the tiebreaker there. But these are all quality teams. Snyder's one that I think that record, the 15-16 record, can largely be discounted. They played a lot of really good teams in the non-district, so a lot of their losses were against really high quality competition. But I think all three of those teams are capable. Big Spring, I think, just having looked at what they did in district, is the one that I'm excited to see if maybe they can make a run to the region semifinals or something like that, just because I do think that of those teams, they probably have the best pitching. But I do think you might be right that they don't have that dominant pitcher, so it is more of a pitch to contact, and then you're gonna have to play defense and score.
All right, now we're going to take a jump up to Class 5A. We got two Class 5A and 6A rather. We've got two locals that will be in the playoffs. We've got Abilene Wiley at 18-7. They'll take on Amarillo Caprock in the bi-district round. Then we've got Abilene High, of course, and Jenna Bane, their head coach, will be joining us here momentarily. Both teams finished strong, Dan. There was some question as to whether or not they would be in the playoffs at all at one point, and then they had a very strong finish, and now they're looking like a threat to do some damage.
Yeah, I think there are some parallels you can draw between those two teams. I think both are very dangerous, very, very dangerous teams playing really well right now. You talk about Abilene and Wiley. They started district play at 0-2. They started with a couple of tough games, but they did start 0-2, weren't necessarily playing at the level they wanted to be playing at. And then they rattle off a really nice run to finish second in district 4-5A. They only lose one more district game the rest of the way. And that was one that they had a couple of errors that kept them from really finishing on a nice winning streak. But nonetheless, they did what they needed to do to get that number 2 seed. And then Abilene High is a similar situation. We talked about them earlier, but starting 1-4, finishing 6-1 from there to finish district 7-5 and as the number 3 seed. And I think both these teams have the components you need to make a deep run. And we've seen both these programs do that in recent years. Wiley went to the region semifinals a couple of years ago, went to the region quarterfinals last year. Abilene High's been to the region quarterfinals 2 of their last 3 trips to the playoffs. These are teams that are capable almost where you expect them to go 2-3 rounds in the playoffs, maybe 4 at this point, which I think says a lot about the level of softball we're watching. That's the thing, just looking at the list we just talked about, and I mean, you start to realize how much depth and talent there is in this area right now. And it's really a fun time to be a big country softball fan, because there are so many quality teams, so many quality players. It is clear to me, I think, and I'm interested to talk to Coach Bain about this, actually, because she's coaching some different areas of the states. I want to get her opinion on this. But I think at this point, big country softball has taken a massive step forward in the past decade, to where you look at these teams with Abilene High, Wiley. Cooper had a down year this year, but they made a deep run last year to the 4th round. So you look at both the local and the area level. We have teams every year where not only are they capable of making deep runs, you almost expect them to. And I think that makes it really fun when you've got teams capable of doing those sorts of things.
12, 15 years ago, you might be talking about one team in Class 3A that has a shot at making the regionals, and then maybe get to state, or maybe 1 or 2 Class 2A teams, et cetera. And now every year, nowadays, it's like we got, we're talking about a chance of having 4 teams in the semifinals, regional semifinals. That would have been unheard of 10 to 15 years ago here. You might get 1 at the most.
And I think the part that's so much fun is and that's really changed, kind of the catalyst behind this change, is the level of consistency you're seeing out of some of these programs. Because when I first got out here, 14 years ago now, Cooper and Abilene High really struggled on the softball field. If they made the playoffs, it was an accomplishment. Now both these teams are fairly routinely making runs in the playoffs, and you just look at the talent they're putting on the field, you expect them to make those runs. Wiley, back when they were 4A, would have every once in a while make a deep run and make the playoffs most years. Now that once they get to the playoffs, you expect them to make the 3rd or 4th round. But you're seeing this at the lower levels too. And what I think is really cool is you're starting to see programs that weren't traditionally super successful at softball that are doing some of these things. You talked about Hamlin. Hamlin's been one of the huge success stories this year on the softball field. They're closing in on 20 wins. They've had a great season, but it's just the depth of talent. And I think a lot of that starts with just the commitment these girls are making to playing year round, playing summer ball, playing travel ball. And it shows. I mean, you can tell how committed these girls are to being really good at softball, and it's paying off for them.
All right. It's just about time to bring on Abilene softball coach Jenna Bane. Before we do that, we want to thank our sponsors. First and foremost, Capital Farm Credit, who brings you these Wednesday night podcasts throughout the school year. Also, for the love of the game broadcasting, our old friend Terry Slavens, owner of K-Lakes 93.5 FM out of Breckenridge, 97.7 FM KATX out of Eastland, Classic Country AM 1330 out of Graham, 94.7 FM KWKQ out of Graham, KROO 1430 AM out of Breck, and KWBY 98.5 FM out of Ranger. That is for the love of the game broadcasting. Also, Rob Durham, sales consultant at Bayer Chevrolet Buick Cadillac up in Breckenridge. If you're in the market for a vehicle, new or used, give him a shout. He's one of the nicest guys you'll ever want to meet. Call him at 254-559-2266. That's Rob Durham up at Bayer Chevrolet Buick Cadillac in Breckenridge. And finally, Phil Hill of the Abilene Realtors Group, big supporter of local athletics. If you're in the market, give him a call at 325-669-5153 or visit his website at philhillproperties.com. All right. And with that, we're just about ready to bring on Coach Jenna Bane from Abilene. The Warbirds were struggling midway through district, and it did not look to me as though they were going to make the playoffs. I was questioning whether they would or not. And all of a sudden, they put all the pieces of the puzzle together. They're playing great ball. They're on fire.
Yeah, for sure. I think the thing early in the season, I mean, all those losses were by 3 runs or less. They had a couple of 2-run losses, a 1-run loss. So it wasn't like they were getting blown off the field or anything. It was just that they were just struggling, just with that consistency. But the thing that worried me was just that this is a really tough district. When you look at Friendship, they've got a really good team. Midland High's got a really good team. And then there are a lot of teams below that are very competitive. So when you start 1-4, you do start to worry a little bit. But like you said, they got on a roll and they're playing really well. And I'm glad to see it because I think that particularly for Coach Bain, who we're going to talk to here in just a minute, when you follow a successful coach, a popular coach, I mean, you want to maintain a level of success. And I was glad they were able to do that. And I think that they're now in position to make a type of run that you've become accustomed to seeing them make. So it's going to be fun to see what they can do now. But yeah, that run during the second half, I think was more indicative of the type of team they have, and I was glad that they were able to do that, and especially for these seniors, because when you start 1-4, that meaning and you're a senior with high expectations, you don't want to finish that way. So I was glad they were able to turn things around. But I'm sure she's proud of what this team's accomplished, and it'll be fun to talk to her about it. And it looks like she's just about ready to join us. So let's go ahead and get her on.
And joining us now, Abilene softball coach Jenna Bane. Coach, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all for having me.
Coach, you've had a strong finish and you're getting into the playoffs. You got a lot of momentum. Tell us about the excitement around the campus, about the program itself.
The girls, have been working hard. They're putting in the work every day. They're taking it game by game, and they're just doing what they do best. And they've put on a good show, and they're getting rolling right at the right time.
And now you do have entering the playoffs, have a big challenge here in the bi-district round with a Good America's team. Just what are some thoughts on this bi-district matchup? Maybe some thoughts on this team y'all are about to take on.
America's is a great team. They've had a lot of success this year. They've had a lot of success last year. I know they have a great pitcher. So knowing that happens in the playoffs at the 6A level, I've tried to prepare us for that by sending us down to the Bryan College Station tournament to face some pretty good pitching. Pulling in Stanford this year to face it, Lolly. And then also, we have Midland in our district who has a great pitcher themselves. And so I feel like our girls swing it really well and our pitchers throw it really well. And as a team, I feel like if we're on our game, it's going to be really hard to beat us, but I'm excited to see the girls get out there and see what we can do.
Coach, every coach wants to peak at the right time. All you guys talk about, peaking at the right time. You won 6 out of your last 7 ball games. Tell us about the confidence level, the impact that's had on your confidence level heading into postseason.
It's had a lot to do with it. I know we struggled that first round, and early in the season, the hitters kind of went through a little downfall, and a little early district, our pitchers were struggling, hitting some spots. And overall, they just all came together, and we kind of had a clear in mind thing after that last game, the first round against Midland. And we kind of just said, hey, every game we're going 0-0, like we said in the very beginning. And we're just going attacking each game as it comes at us. And the girls have put in the work. We did really good with our scouting reports that I took, throughout the first round. And I feel like that really helped us going into the second round. The kids they're sponges of the game. They want to be told. I charted their pitches. I charted the other team's pitches. And I think that really helped them
So
going into
sometimes taking one game at a time, the old cliche works sometimes.
Absolutely.
Right.
And Coach, we talked about this a little bit when I was over on campus the other day, but you kind of arrived at Abilene High really at a height for the program. Has enjoyed a lot of success in recent years, had trips to the third round, and I think 2 of their last 3 playoff appearances. So obviously y'all have had a little success. This is a high time for the program right now. Is that something going into the playoffs that adds some motivation to kind of keep that going? Or is there some, I guess, concern that it adds a little pressure as well?
A little bit of both. These kids are winners. They enjoy winning. They're competitors. They're going to do whatever it takes to get there. And I know last year finishing district in that 4th seed immediately made them want to fight for a district championship this year. And so that was one of their goals. And after how that first round went, I mean, that was one of the things they feel like they know that they can beat most teams. And so going into district, the second round, that's what they said, we can beat every one of those that beat us. And so it just helped clear the mind. The seniors are a huge part of this. They have a winning nature. They've been a part of a lot of winning teams. They're great kids on and off the field. And I mean, they're going to do whatever it takes to win. And like I said, it is a little bit of pressure with having everybody back and going in the third round, but also every round is different and you don't exactly have the same road. Sometimes if you finish first, you have a tougher road than finishing 4th.
Coach, this is your first year. You replaced a successful coach in Jim Reese. Tell us about the challenges that you faced as a first-year coach and the expectations that you had, and have you met those expectations?
It's always just the same pressure of, coming into a successful program that's had success in the coaching staff that it's had before and getting all the same kids back. And like I told the girls when I got here, I'm not trying to change Abilene High softball. I'm here to just add to it. What they've had here is an awesome winning tradition, competitive softball, kids that love the game. And so here lately, we've just been trying to add a little bit to it, try to get from good to great. And we try to do that on a daily basis. And when I did get here, a little bit nerve wracking, you have 6 seniors coming in, 9 or 10 10 returners coming back. And I mean, just the buy-in, but when I got here, the buy-in's been great. We haven't had any issues. The kids are awesome. They're always eager to learn what's next. And I mean, we've achieved some goals. We would have liked the district championship, but we got off to a slow start. But like they say, it's not always how you start, but it's how you finish.
And that kind of leads me into the next question. You mentioned those seniors. Just how important were they in kind of setting the tone for that buy-in and kind of helping your transition in this first year?
I mean, they've been super important. I mean, they're definitely the role leaders in this program. Everybody looks up to them. That's kind of one aspect. They're so competitive. Sometimes they get down on them and I have to explain that to them. Like, I know you have to be you want to be frustrated, but everybody looks up to you. So you have to make sure you respond in the correct way to where others are building on from that. And so they've been huge. They bought in. They were the first ones to meet me when I got here. I had a Zoom with them back at my old school before I actually physically came down here. We had a meeting the first day when I got down here. And I mean, they've been great and supportive ever since I got here.
Coach, one nice thing to have heading into the playoffs is pitching depth. And that's one area that it looks like you're pretty strong. Tell us about Perez and Silva and how important that's going to be in postseason.
I've never been at a school that's had 2 really, really great pitchers, and it's been nothing but a blessing. Maddie's 4 years of experience, throws the ball well. Diana is still a sophomore, but did great things for them last year in towards playoffs and has been doing great things for us as well. It's really nice because they're 2 completely different pitchers. And so it's kind of hard when you have the same pitcher, but in this kind of game, if you can throw people off because they're completely different, that helps. And then we even have Bree Barajas at first base that can come in and throw some too, that has a good little off speed that can help offset hitters when we need her to.
And kind of moving over to the position side, you've got a lot of obviously a very good defensive team behind those 2 pitchers, and that's obviously a big plus for you guys. But then you also have a very deep and balanced lineup. It seems like you're blessed really with a lot of well-rounded players. Just kind of talk about that a little bit and kind of just, I mean, how nice is that as a coach to have girls that are so good in so many different areas?
Absolutely. When I kind of got here, the girls coming from them, they just felt like one area they struggled was maybe some defense last year. And so I told them, we put a lot of effort into hitting. Y'all all take your private lessons. You're great mechanical hitters. You're known for hitting the long ball. And so we're going to make sure we play defense behind our pitchers. And so a lot of our off season, even down to throwing mechanics and lots of throwing things, fielding the balls. I mean, we've had so many reps at defense just to make sure we can back our pitchers up. And so that has played a huge part. We are blessed with very athletic kids, lots of kids that can play all sorts of positions. I know last year in playoffs, you saw Bree Barajas in the outfield. She's at first base now, and she can pitch some. Maddie Perez and Diana Silva can also play the outfield. Amaya Starks is one that can go anywhere. Little freshman Kinsley can too. That one will shock everybody. She's our third baseman, but is probably still one of our top outfielders and one of our better catchers, and can also pitch as well. So it's just nice. These kids are athletic. They love the game. They're not settling. Sometimes I have to make sure we practice the positions we're actually going to play. Like for instance, at practice, Lene Carr, center fielder, can I play second base? No, because you will never play second base in a game. But they're always eager to try something new. We play a lot of competitive games that gives them the opportunity to rotate around, and they really enjoy that.
Coach, if you're going to do some damage in postseason, if you're going to go a few rounds deep, what's going to be the keys? What's going to get you there?
Our key is going to be hitting the ball when runners are in scoring position. There for a little bit, we struggled with that. We'd get a lot of runners on, and then runners in second and third, and one out, we couldn't get them in. And here lately, we've been putting the runners, getting them in when we needed to. Pitchers hitting their spots, because I'm one of those psychos that study. So I feel like if my pitchers hit our spots, execute well, they do throw very well balls, and our hitters execute runners in scoring position. And I mean, defense has to play just like they've played all year. We've had one or two upset games with our defense, but overall they play a really tight defense and back our pitchers up.
Sooner or later, as you go through the playoffs, you're going to run into that beast pitcher in the circle. But one thing with the prep that you've done, especially with, facing Citlali Gutierrez, you're probably not going to face anything that you haven't seen thus far.
Correct. I think Citlali is definitely one that, she, even at the 2A level, she is superb to pitchers at the 5A, 6A level. She throws the ball well. She throws it hard. Even just her tall demeanor, I think, puts a little fear and stuff. And we struggled with her at first, but I feel like we faced her again and we could finally make the adjustment. I think our hitters are very adjustable, which is one reason why I like the series. I think our pitchers, we have the pitching staff to go a series, and I think it's going to be really hard for another pitching staff to shut our hitters down 3 games in a row.
And Coach, for the last one, I'm going to shift gears just a little bit. I've talked a lot to our coaches in town and then throughout the area in recent years. Just I feel like in the last 5, 6, maybe even 10 years, we've seen kind of a resurgence of softball in this area, where there just seems to be a higher level of emphasis, and the level of play has risen quite a bit. And I kind of wanted to ask you, because you do have experience in other parts of the state, having coached at Caddo Mills and Navasota. Just what are your impressions of the level of play in this area, and kind of just, I guess, the state and future of big country softball?
The athleticism in softball out here is unreal, like you said. It's off the charts. I know when I first got out here and we had a day of skill days for summer conditioning, I'm contacting she was the district champ at my last district at Farmersville, Paula Wilfong, and she's had successful programs. And I just sent her videos of like our JV kids warming up. And I just said, like, these kids would start for our varsities around where we were. And it's nothing against those other towns, but it's just, the talent out here is surreal. And the kids, I think it's West Texas. I don't think there's a whole lot to do, like in Dallas and College Station and Austin. So, the parents have them playing ball their whole life, and it's really paying off for their softball careers.
Coach, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck. We'll be keeping an eye on you, and just we appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right. Thank y'all.
Appreciate it, Coach.
And that was Abilene softball coach Jenna Bane. I'm interested to see how far they can get. They've got pitching depth, they've got momentum, and they've got a ball club that's capable of adjusting to the upper tier pitchers, as they proved with Gutierrez. It's a team that's well equipped for a deep run, it would appear.
Yeah. We saw that too with Midland High. The first time they played Midland High, they lost 2-0 to a really good pitcher and who actually had a perfect game in that matchup. The second time they play them, they lose 4-3 in 9 innings in Abilene and really have some opportunities to score more. So this is a team that the more they see a pitcher, the better they are. And I think that does bode well in a serious situation. But this is a program that's really, done some really nice things the last several years. They've gotten to the region quarterfinals in 2 of the last 3 trips to the playoffs. Of course, you had that 2020 shutdown to COVID, and that might have been their best team of all. Like that team could have gone really deep as well. But this is a program that's starting to build some real tradition there, and I think this team has the ability to continue that. So it's going to be fun to see what they can do in the playoffs, particularly with how well they've been playing. This is not. If you're a second place team, this is not the number 3 seed you want to face in the first round of the playoffs. This is a team that's playing at a much higher level than you see a lot of 3 seeds be playing at. So, and also they won last year. They went to the 3rd round last year as a 4 seed, so they've got some experience doing this as well. So it's gonna be fun. And I was glad we could talk to Coach Bain about that. You can kind of see the excitement that she has for this team and kind of what its capabilities are.
All right. With that, it's just about time to wrap up the Capital Farm Credit Wednesday night podcast. But before we do that, we want to remind you that we've got 3 separate subscription packages here at bigcountrypreps.com. We've got a monthly for $5 a month. We've got a semi-annual 6-month subscription where we knock that price down to $4 a month. And then we've got an annual 12-month subscription where we knock that price down to $3 a month, $36 for a full year of Big Country High School athletic coverage.
We'd also like to remind you, if you ever see a photo you like in any one of our galleries, those are available for purchase. You can purchase a digital download for just $7, or some keepsakes and prints are available as well. So make sure you check those out. As you're scrolling the site, you'll notice that we take a whole lot of photos from these games we're at. It's something we enjoy doing and something we're very proud of here at bigcountrypreps.com.
All Big Country, all high school, all the time. Welcome home.